Workplace knowledge domain. This domain covers crucial HR knowledge related to the workplace. Its functional areas include managing a global workforce, risk management, corporate social responsibility, and U.S. employment law and regulations. To be successful at their jobs, HR professionals need to know how to manage a global workforce to achieve organizational objectives, manage organizational risks and threats to the safety and security of employees, contribute to the well-being and betterment of the community, and comply with applicable laws and regulations. Managing a global workforce. Managing a global workforce focuses on the role of the HR professional in managing global and mobile workforces to achieve organizational objectives. Key concepts. HR structures that support global work. Examples include immigration and mobility specialists, geographic centers of excellence, global job classifications, international business travel policies. Immigration and mobility. Examples include laws, visa processes and requirements, sponsorship expenses. Best practices for international assignments. Examples include performance expectations and evaluations, health and safety, compensation adjustments, socialization, assessing employee and family readiness, training on culture and resources, language training, education travel grants, rental subsidies, transition plans, repatriation. Methods for moving work. Examples include offshoring, onshoring, nearshoring, remote teams. Proficiency indicators for all HR professionals. Maintains up-to-date knowledge of political, economic, social, technological, legal and environmental, PESL factors and their influence on an organization's universal workforce. Administers and supports HR activities associated with a global and mobile workforce. Balances the organization's desire for standardization of cross-border HR programs, practices, and policies with local needs. Manages and supports the organization's immigration and mobility program in accordance with regulatory or compliance requirements. Manages the day-to-day activities associated with international, i.e., expatriate, assignments. For advanced HR professionals. Recognizes and responds to global PESL issues that influence the organization's strategy and workforce. Develops a comprehensive organizational strategy that addresses global workforce issues. Consults with business leaders to define global competencies and embed them throughout the organization. Establishes and oversees the organization's immigration and mobility policy and program in accordance with regulatory or compliance requirements. Identifies opportunities to achieve efficiencies and cost savings by moving work across borders. Designs and oversees programs for international, i.e., expatriate, assignments that support the organizational strategy and workforce. Risk management. Risk management is the identification, assessment, and prioritization of risks, and the application of resources to minimize, monitor, and control the probability and impact of those risks accordingly. Key concepts. Enterprise risk management processes and best practices, and risk treatments. Examples of enterprise risk management processes and best practices include understanding context, identifying risks, analyzing risks, prioritizing risks. Examples of risk treatments include avoidance, reduction, sharing, retention. Approaches to qualitative and quantitative risk assessment. Examples include single loss expectancy, annualized loss expectancy. Risk sources and types. Examples of risk sources include project failures, insufficient resources. Examples of risk types include hazard, financial, operational, strategic. Legal and regulatory compliance auditing and investigation techniques. Examples include audit or investigation plan, corrective actions. Quality assurance techniques and methods. Examples include after-action analysis, industry-specific standards. Business recovery and continuity of operations planning. Examples include business continuity and disaster recovery plan, evacuation procedures and simulations. Emergency and disaster preparation and response planning. Examples of emergencies and disasters include communicable disease, natural disaster, severe weather, terrorism, man-made disaster. Examples of preparation and response planning include communication mechanisms, evacuation plans. Safety and security concerns and prevention. Examples include workplace violence, active shooter, theft, fraud, corporate espionage, sabotage, kidnapping and ransom, insider threat, data breach. Workplace/occupational injury and illness prevention, investigations and workspace solutions. Examples include identification of hazards, safety training. Approaches to a drug-free workplace. Examples include drug testing, treatment of substance abuse. Proficiency indicators for all HR professionals. Monitors PESEL factors and their influence on the organization. Administers and supports HR programs, practices and policies that identify and/or mitigate workplace risk. Implements crisis management, contingency and business continuity plans for the HR function and the organization. Communicates critical information about risks and risk mitigation to employees at all levels. Conducts due diligence investigations to evaluate risks and ensure legal and regulatory compliance. Conducts workplace safety and health-related investigations. Audits risk management activities and plans. Maintains and ensures accurate reporting of internationally accepted workplace health and safety standards. Incorporates anticipated level of risk into business cases. For advanced HR professionals. Develops, implements and oversees formal and routinized processes for monitoring the organization's internal and external environments to identify potential risks. Monitors and evaluates labor market, industry and global trends at the macro level for their impact on the organization. Examines potential threats to the organization and guides leadership accordingly. Develops, implements and oversees a comprehensive enterprise risk management strategy. Develops crisis management, contingency and business continuity plans for the HR function and the organization. Communicates critical information about risks and risk mitigation to senior-level employees and external stakeholders. Ensures that risk management activities and plans are audited and the results are used to improve risk mitigation strategies. Oversees workplace safety and health-related investigations and reporting. Establishes strategies to address workplace retaliation and violence. Leads after-action debriefs following significant workplace incidents. Evaluates the anticipated level of risk associated with strategic opportunities. Corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility, CSR, represents the organization's commitment to operate ethically and contribute to economic development while improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families as well as of the local and global community. Key concepts: HR-related activities that support sustainability. Examples include human rights, safety practices, labor standards, performance development, inclusion and diversity, compensation, supply chain management. Organizational philosophies and policies. Examples include development, integration, shared value. Steps to implement CSR strategy. Examples include developing a business case, obtaining executive approval, selecting recipients, identifying and analyzing performance indicators, recruiting and organizing participants. Approaches to community inclusion and engagement. Examples include representation on community boards, joint community projects, employee volunteerism. Proficiency indicators for all HR professionals. Acts as a professional role model and representative of the organization when interacting with the community. Identifies and promotes opportunities for HR and the organization to engage in CSR activities that align with the organization's CSR strategy. Identifies opportunities to incorporate environmentally and socially responsible business practices and shares them with leadership. Helps staff at all levels understand the societal impact of business decisions and the role of the organization's CSR strategy in improving the community. Maintains transparency of HR programs, practices, and policies where appropriate. Coaches managers to achieve an appropriate level of transparency in organizational practices and decisions. For advanced HR professionals. Develops a CSR strategy that reflects the organization's mission and values. Coordinates with business leaders to integrate CSR objectives throughout the organization. Coordinates with business leaders to develop and implement appropriate levels of corporate self-governance and transparency. Partners with business leaders to develop strategies that encourage and support environmentally and socially responsible business decisions. Aligns CSR activities with the organization's CSR strategy and engages the organization's workforce and the community at large. Uses metrics to measure and report how the organization's CSR programs enhance the employee value proposition, positively impact HR programs, or contribute to the organization's competitive advantage. U.S. employment law and regulations. U.S. employment law and regulations refers to the knowledge and application of all relevant laws and regulations in the United States relating to employment, provisions that set the parameters and limitations for each HR functional area and for organizations overall. Key concepts: employment and authorization to work. Examples include Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, Form I-9 and E-Verify, green cards and visa types. Examples include H-1B, F-1, Employment at Will, Background Checks, Fair Credit Reporting Act of 1970, FCRA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Policy. Compensation. Examples include Davis-Bacon Act of 1931, Walsh-Healy Public Contracts Act of 1936, Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, FLSA, Wage Hour Bill, Wagner-Connery Wages and Hours Act, and amendments, including the 2020 Overtime Rule, Equal Pay Act of 1963, amending FLSA, McNamara-O'Hara Service Contract Act of 1965, Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, ERISA, Affordable Care Act's Break Time for Nursing Mothers, 2010, Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009, Ledbetter v. Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, 2007. Employee Relations. Examples include National Labor Relations Act of 1935, NLRA, Wagner Act, Wagner-Connery Labor Relations Act, Labor Management Relations Act of 1947, LMRA, Taft-Hartley Act, Labor Management Reporting and Disclosure Act of 1959 and amendments, Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986, Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act, WARN, of 1988, Employee Polygraph Protection Act of 1988, NLRB v. Weingarten, 1975, Lechmere Incorporated v. NLRB, 1992. Job Safety and Health. Examples include Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, HIPAA, Guidelines on Sexual Harassment, Workers' Compensation. Equal Employment Opportunity. Examples include Civil Rights Acts of 1964, including Title VII, Executive Order 11246, 1965, Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, ADEA, and amendments, Equal Employment Opportunity Act of 1972, Rehabilitation Act of 1973, including Sections 501 and 503. Vietnam-Era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act of 1974, Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures, 29 CFR Part 1607, 1978, Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978, Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, ADA, and amendments, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008, GINA, Executive Order 13672, 2014, Griggs v. Duke Power Company, 1971, Phillips v. Martin Marietta Corporation, 1971, McDonnell Douglas Corporation v. Green, 1973. Key Concepts. Continued. Leave and Benefits. Examples include Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1985, COBRA, Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, FMLA, Expanded 2008-2010, Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act of 1994, USERRA, Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, including rules for breaks and lactation rooms for nursing mothers. Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, ADA, and amendments, including leave as a reasonable accommodation, Defense of Marriage Act, overruled in 2013, EEOC. Verizon, 2011, National Federation of Independent Business versus Sibelius, 2012. Miscellaneous. Examples include drug screening, medical marijuana. Proficiency indicators for all HR professionals. maintains a current working knowledge of relevant domestic and global employment laws, ensures that HR programs, practices, and policies align and comply with laws and regulations. Coaches employees at all levels in understanding and avoiding illegal and non-compliant HR-related behaviors. Examples include illegal terminations or discipline, unfair labor practices. Brokers internal or external legal services for interpretation of employment laws. For advanced HR professionals. Maintains current, expert knowledge of relevant domestic and global employment laws. Establishes and monitors criteria for organizational compliance with laws and regulations. Educates and advises leadership on HR-related legal and regulatory compliance issues. Oversees fulfillment of compliance requirements for HR programs, practices, and policies. Ensures that HR technologies facilitate compliance and reporting requirements. Examples include tracking employee accidents, safety reports.